So the 2017 Death Note movie is one of my guilty pleasure movies. I actually rewatch it on a semi-regular basis, and I don't know anyone else who that's the case for. I actually don't know anyone else who even finds the movie tolerable. And I think there are a lot of valid reasons for that, but I also know a lot of information about the movie itself from the directors and some of the producers that kind of make some of the critiques I see of the movie null and void. And I'm not trying to defend the movie, say that it's some wonderful, faithful adaptation of the manga. It's not nearly as good as the anime. It's not as good as the manga. I wouldn't even really say it's a good movie, but I still think it's a fun movie, and I think having this information allows you to view it in a different light, adds some new critiques, and also maybe makes it more watchable for you. So first I want to address the glaring, obvious problems that there are in the movie, because there are a lot of them. So the first one is that the rules of the Death Note itself are weird. They're a huge stretch. They don't make any logical sense in the context of the world that we're living in, which isn't the case in the manga and the anime. In the manga and the anime, they make perfect sense in the context of the world we're in. They're not some kind of stretch. We're not grasping at straws or having to change things like retroactively in order to make the Death Note make sense. Like the part where Mia won't die if she doesn't take the Death Note. The whole point of the Death Note is whoever's name is written in the book is going to die. You just get to determine, what they do leading up to their death and the manner of death. But regardless, they die. Second, we lose Elle and Light's game of cat and mouse, which is a really big part of what makes the Death Note anime series and manga series so enjoyable. The movie more so centers on the relationship between Mia and Light and kind of their dynamic, and I understand why based on information I'll reveal later, but I really think that took away from the movie and that kind of made Elle feel like a side character, and I almost feel like Elle shouldn't have been included at all at that point. Wateri's death was just stupid. It was just, I don't have anything else to say about that. It was just stupid. In this version of Death Note, Ryuk actively dislikes Light. I would actually go as far as to say that Ryuk hates Light. Not even indifferent to him. Like in the original show, it's more about like the game they have going on, Light is a source of entertainment for Ryuk. But in this show, Ryuk hates Light, hates Light, conspires against him, hates him. And again, that makes the show less enjoyable. It's a lot more enjoyable if Ryuk is indifferent to Light and just kind of in it for the entertainment side, in it for the game, and will help him where it will make it more entertaining and hinder him where it will make it more entertaining. Back to Elle, his defeat is lame. He is literally knocked out by a wooden plank. We're taking out the best detective in the world with a wooden plank. Again, I think that they should have just cut Elle out of the movie at this point. I think they only included Elle because he's such a big character in the anime and because they thought that fans would be upset if they didn't include Elle. And the last thing I want to talk about is the fact that Light and Mia throughout the whole movie talk about the Death Note so openly. They talk about it everywhere, in public, in class. You're telling me no one heard? You're telling me no one knows that these two are Kira? It's, again, the logic of this world not making sense. It's the convenient logic of everything. Those are just some of the glaring problems that there are. Again, there are a lot of issues with this movie, but none of those ruin it for me enough that I can't watch it. So what was the goal of this movie? Because the goal of this movie was very different than the goal of the anime. So the thesis of the anime and manga series is that power is inherently corruptive. It is a cautionary tale on the inherent corruptive nature of power. And in the anime and manga adaptations, Misa Amane is kind of a cautionary tale. She's a cautionary tale on lust for vengeance, blind loyalty, and what happens when you misunderstand what unconditional love truly is. The movie, however, is a coming-of-age story. Director Adam Wingard and producer Matsuoka explained that the intention with making this movie was to kind of tell Light's story before he gets to the point he's at in the anime. Adam Wingard quite literally is quoted as saying, "To me, it was always about sort of the origin story, and that even though we were just very loosely basing it off the original source material, that, it was just about the beginning of it." Oka has also said, "We wanted to make this as an original story that kind of ends where the manga starts. Light in the film ends where Light in the manga kind of begins." I think having that information alone is very crucial. The 2017 movie seems to kind of be trying to make the point that the lesser of two evils is still evil. This is evidenced to me by the end of the movie where he's laying in the hospital and he's talking to his dad and he's telling him that, everything that he did in the end of the movie, where he had that whole plot at the Ferris wheel with Misa dying, was him choosing between the lesser of two evils. And his dad, at the very end of the movie, asks him, "And which are you, son?" It's very clear they were trying to explore the idea of picking between the lesser of two evils. What is the lesser of two evils? And the lesser of two evils is still a form of evil. Now let's get a little bit more into the characters themselves. I'm specifically going to talk about Light Yagami and Misa Amane. I'm going to start with Misa Amane because I have the least to say about her, and it's that Misa Amane was not adapted into this movie. That has also been stated by the producer and directors. She wasn't in this movie. She was never adapted. Light Yagami was actually split into two different characters, Mia Sutton and Light Turner. I don't know why they named her Mia and didn't think everyone would assume she was Misa. You know, I guess they just figured that people would get the point. Or maybe she was originally an adaptation of Misa and then the direction changed when writing the script. I have no idea. These are just kind of like theories I'm throwing out. So Light Turner is an adaptation of Light Yagami's disdain for the state of the justice system and his intentions with the Death Note before it corrupts him. He's still the son of a police officer. He's still very book smart. However, his mother is deceased. She was killed by a drunk driver. His story is a lot more similar to Misa's. Light Turner is a lot more sympathetic than Light Yagami. Light Yagami is turned into like this sociopath with a god complex because the Death Note corrupts him. But Light Turner is just kind of a kid that gets in over his head. You know, a lot of his actions are driven by grief, by being angry about the death of his mother. One of the first people he kills is a bully, and then he goes after the man who killed his mother, who was able to get out of any like sentencing or any punishment because of his connections. However, in this version, the Death Note doesn't corrupt his sense of morality at all. When discussing Light as a character, Adam Wingard stated, Light in this version is much more kind of naive and altruistic, I think. And so, if this is his origin story, it's interesting to kind of see how he would be a dark person as it goes. And then when we get to the point where, you know, the cops are coming after him and threatening him, Light doesn't want to kill the FBI agents coming after him or his father. Mia suggests it. He says no. He just is like, you know what? We'll lay low until they lay off of us and then we'll start killing criminals again. He doesn't feel the need to kill the FBI agents to protect himself. He can't justify that to himself the way that he could in the anime. At the end of the day, Light in this movie seems to be a lot more of a grieving child who's grappling with the death of his mother in a very unjust way. You know, the trauma of losing his mom in a very preventable manner and then having the person who is the reason she's dead essentially be able to walk off scot-free causes a lot of anger in a child. And, you know, you present that child with this insane amount of power, the power to avenge her above all, to avenge others who've been through this and prevent this from happening again if he can. They're gonna get a little in over their head. He is a far more sympathetic character in the movie than he is in the anime. He does not have a god complex in the movie. He's just a kid. So now let's talk about Mia. Mia is an adaptation of Light Yagami's sociopathy and his god complex. She's essentially the adaptation of Light Yagami after the Death Note has corrupted him. She's also a cheerleader. I don't know if that's important, but that's like kind of a big part of her character. I don't know, it's how she's introduced. She's a cheerleader. When talking about Mia's background, Adam Wingard said, she's a very mysterious character in the sense that we don't know too much about her background. But I did think there was something interesting about the coupling of the two characters being the foundation of this movie. This is in some ways is about high school kids in their first relationship. He also said, one of the most interesting things about our film was that this isn't a movie about giving the Death Note to Light. It's really about giving the Death Note to Light and Mia, which really creates and give birth to this kind of phenomenon. This really drives home the point that they are both adaptations of Light Yagami. They literally split Light Yagami into two people. When talking about Mia's characterization, Adam Wingard said, you know, the idea is almost like Mia in some ways, is as more like the original version of Light personality-wise. You know, she's a bit more sociopathic in that same kind of way. In this movie, Mia is obsessed with the Death Note, obsessed with it. Mia takes pages out of it and kills the FBI agents herself against Light's will and suggests killing his father. Yeah, let's just make the boy an orphan. That he'll go along with that, you psycho. She is extremely manipulative and very obsessed with the power that the Death Note gives her. This obsession ends up being her downfall in the most logical stretch of an ending this movie possibly could have come up with. Anyways, that's all I have on the 2017 Death Note movie. Again, still a lot of logical stretches. I'm not claiming it's a good movie, but I hope this information maybe lets you look at the movie in a new light. And I don't know, maybe rewatch it knowing that Mia and Light Turner are both adaptations of Light Yagami. I actually think that's a really interesting concept and a really interesting thing they tried to do. I just really don't think it was executed well. The thing that makes Death Note as beloved as it is its theme. Its theme that power corrupts. You have now taken that away. You need to come up with just as good of a theme, and I don't think that they actually came up with a really good message to push with this. I think they just came up with a cool idea and thought the name Death Note would carry the movie. Bye.